We are starting with slide 30 of the chapter 40 PowerPoint slides, and we're talking about endocrine system diseases, and these diseases are specifically adrenal cortex diseases and conditions. So first, Addison disease. Addison disease occurs when there's insufficient secretion of hormones by the adrenal cortex. Now, if you remember, the adrenal cortex secretes cortisol. That's one of the hormones that it secretes is cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So symptoms are dehydration, weakness, weight loss, and hypotension, which is opposite of hypertension. Hypertension is high blood pressure, hypotension is low. So that's Addison disease. Then there is Cushing syndrome, which is excessive levels of glucocorticoids, such as cortisol, and it causes the metabolism of muscle protein, so it breaks down your muscle tissue, and deposition of subcutaneous fat in the midsection. Here's a picture of a person's hands with Addison disease. See the weakness in the muscle tissue? It just, here and here. And you can just see that the muscle tone is not there. I know hands, you don't think about muscle tone in somebody's hands, but you can definitely see the thumbs just look like, it doesn't look like there's enough muscle tissue to make them work, I've never known anyone with Addison disease. I don't know much about it, but I can just look at these pictures and see the thumbs are kind of slack and just laying there. And I'm looking at my own hands right now, and you can see it's not like it's not like defined muscle here, but you can tell a difference. If you compare your hands to these hands and look at the thumbs, you can really see the wasting of the muscle tissue. And then here is Cushing syndrome, and what a person looks like who has Cushing syndrome. And then we're going to talk about the pancreas, which is a very important gland. It has an exocrine function and an endocrine function. So as part of the endocrine system, the pancreas releases insulin and glucagon. It produces insulin and glucagon and releases it to the cells of the liver mostly, but also muscle cells. So for the endocrine portion of the pancreas, the tissue and the cells are called islet cells, pancreatic islet cells. And these cells, they're alpha cells and they're beta cells. And the alpha cells, I believe it's the alpha cells that secrete glucagon, and beta cells secrete insulin. Insulin is secreted when you have high blood sugar. And remember, blood sugar is glucose. So when you have high blood glucose levels, and what it does is it stimulates the uptake of glucose by cells. And those cells typically are liver cells and muscle cells. Glucagon is secreted when you have low blood glucose. Now, what most of the time happens when a person has low blood sugar, when they're awake, they eat. But glucagon would be released, say, at night if you have a low blood glucose level, or at a time when you don't eat, then the pancreas releases glucagon. And it causes the breakdown of glycogen into glucose by the liver, and then that glucose is released into your blood to raise your blood glucose levels. Now, the exocrine portion of the pancreas secretes digestive enzymes that help in the small intestine to break down food. This is an illustration of the regulation of blood glucose levels, and we're going to blow it up. And I'll tell you why, because I have diabetes and my daughter has diabetes. We have two different types. I have, we both have diabetes mellitus instead of insipidus, because diabetes insipidus has nothing to do with blood sugar. But diabetes type 2 is what I have. And a lot of times that's referred to as adult onset diabetes. Now, my daughter has type 1, and she was diagnosed when she was 2 years old. So she takes insulin shots. So, but I know diabetes is something that everyone will have some kind of experience with during their life, whether it's them personally or a family member. So I think it's important that we all understand it. So let's look at this negative feedback chart here. When your blood glucose levels are high, after eating, the pancreas will secrete insulin into the blood, because after you eat is when your blood glucose levels start to rise. Then the islet cells, the pancreatic islet of Langerhans, is the full name of that. Those cells release insulin. The insulin binds to receptors on the cells of the liver, muscle cells, and even fat tissue. And the liver will take glucose from the blood and store it in long chains called glycogen. Muscle cells will do the same thing and also can use it to help build protein. And then adipose or fat tissue will take the glucose from the blood and convert it to fat. So this all lowers blood glucose levels, and they return to the normal range. Now, if your blood glucose is low, you have a low blood sugar, before eating, the pancreas secretes glucagon into the blood. Now, I don't really know how all that works, but your pancreas does not know that it's just before you're eating. So it's not like that. It's just that during times when your blood glucose is low, and also, I guess a little bit, there's a maintenance of blood glucose. We don't completely understand the glucagon aspect. We understand insulin a lot better than glucagon. But we do know the pancreas produces glucagon, and we know what its effects are. So glucagon helps to raise blood sugar levels when they are too low. If you don't eat food. So one thing that glucagon does is causes the adipose tissue or fat tissue to break down fat and convert it to glucose. And it causes the liver to break down glycogen and release glucose into the blood, and that causes your blood glucose levels to rise. So that is basically the negative feedback mechanism for insulin and glucagon for blood glucose levels. Diabetes mellitus is the inability of the body cells to take up glucose as they should. It causes blood glucose levels to be higher than normal. It is what causes the low blood glucose levels in type 2 diabetics is too much insulin. But the diabetes itself causes high blood glucose, hyperglycemia. The cells must rely on other sources of energy, such as fatty acids. And as blood glucose levels rise, glucose along with water is excreted in the urine. And this results in frequent urination and a feeling of being really, really thirsty. A person with type 1 diabetes, it's an autoimmune disorder, actually, and your immune system attacks the cells of your pancreas that produce insulin, those islet cells, and destroys them. So the pancreas no longer can do its job. It can't produce the insulin. So the body turns to breaking down fat, which leads to the buildup of ketones in the blood. And that's why type 1 diabetics, when they do have high blood glucose, blood sugar, they also need to check sometimes their ketones. There's you have strips that will check your glucose levels. There are also ketone strips that you can use with urine or blood. And if you have ketoacidosis, that can be life-threatening. That's when your blood pH drops really low due to the buildup of ketones. And it's important to get your blood glucose levels back in their normal range. Patients with type 1 must have daily insulin injections. Then for type 2, patients are typically overweight. I personally have battled my weight my whole life, except when I was a child, but once I hit puberty, I've battled with my weight ever since. It's been a struggle basically every day. So, but it's not always true. There are people with type 2 diabetes that are not overweight. There are people with type 1 who are all different sizes. I mean, type 1 diabetics, that doesn't really, you can't always link weight to a type 1 diabetic. And my daughter was very, very thin most of her life, and now she's a good normal size. She's grown. But anyway, going back to type 2 diabetes, patients are typically overweight, and adipose tissue produces a substance that impairs insulin receptor function. So it makes you what we call insulin resistant. You make the insulin, but the insulin and the receptor, the insulin binding to the receptor, that whole process is kind of messed up. So it is prevented and controlled by adhering to a low-fat diet, a low-sugar diet, and exercising regularly. And I have also struggled with all of that for most of my life, sticking to a low-fat, low-sugar diet and exercising regularly. I have a sucker in my purse right now, and I'm thinking about it because I guess feel like I need some sugar. But anyway, okay, let's move on to the testes and the ovaries and their role in producing hormones and the endocrine system. So the testes are located in the scrotum of the male. They produce testosterone, which is responsible for the secondary sex characteristics of males, including the deeper voice, the body hair, larger size, more massive muscles, Anabolic steroids mimic the effects of testosterone and can lead to dangerous side effects. Under the influence of the gonadotropic hormones, the testes release increased testosterone at puberty, stimulating the growth of the penis and the testes. And then the ovaries are located in the pelvic cavity of the female. They produce estrogen and progesterone and contribute to the secondary sex characteristics of females. The higher voice, the breast development, and the fatty deposits around the breast and the hip area, those kinds of things. So estrogen secreted at puberty stimulates the growth of the uterus and the vagina. This is giving you effects of anabolic steroid use. I haven't looked at this, but I don't know all these effects. So it causes balding in men and women, hair on the face and chest in women, deepening of the voice in women, breast enlargement in men, and breast reduction in women, liver dysfunction, cancer, kidney disease, retaining fluid, giving you what they call steroid bloat. I did not know all this. I mean, I knew there were side effects, but look at all these side effects. Reduced testicular size, low sperm count, and impotency. The roid rage. Now, I knew about that. I knew about the reduced testicular size and low sperm count and impotency. I knew about that, and the acne. Because, I've known people in my life that did steroids, took steroids for sports. High blood cholesterol and atherosclerosis, high blood pressure, and damage to the heart. In women, it increases the size of the ovaries. It causes menstruation to cease. It stunts growth in adolescence. This is bad. I wouldn't use that stuff. I don't think it's worth it. But the pineal gland. Okay, so moving on to the pineal gland, which is in the brain, it produces something that many of you maybe take, maybe or have taken over the counter. You can buy this, anywhere at a drugstore, grocery store, Walmart. Melatonin is thought by a lot of people to be for sleep. But it is really a hormone that is involved in the sleep-wake cycle called the circadian rhythms. It is controlled by an internal biological clock, and it actually affects a lot more than sleep. It even affects sexual reproduction, and I don't know exactly how, but I know the circadian rhythms, our 24-hour sleep-wake cycle. All of that's tied into healthy, sexual function. So it's related to other things besides just sleep. But if you are low on melatonin, then it will help you sleep. If that is the problem, melatonin will help you to sleep. If you have plenty of melatonin, adding melatonin isn't going to change anything. you're still going to have trouble sleeping. You need to find something else to help you. Thymus gland is most active during childhood because it is basically has the purpose of helping to mature the T cells of our immune system, the T lymphocytes of our immune system. And so when you're young, your thymus gland is healthy and active and large, and then as you get older, it reduces and turns into kind of fatty tissue. This is showing melatonin production levels from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. It's showing that it increases in the winter versus in the summer. You produce more in the winter. I don't really know what the graph at A means, experimental. I'm not sure. Unless they were trying, I don't know. I'm not really sure. I'm sorry about that. I should have looked that up. But it's figure 40.18, so you can always go read it in your textbook. It's the same figure in your textbook. Now, there are other chemicals that we're going to talk about. Leptin, which is secreted by adipose tissue. Been a lot of research done because trying to use leptin to control appetite. So there's a lot of research going on in the weight loss industry using leptin, information we know about leptin. EPO, or erythropoietin, is produced by the kidneys. It stimulates the production of red blood cells in the red bone marrow, and it causes your blood volume to increase because you have more cells in your blood. So it increases your blood pressure as well. Prostaglandins are local hormones. They are not distributed in the blood. They are distributed to the tissue fluid in a very close to where they're released. So they're a little different from hormones in that way. They are thought to be the cause of some of the pain and discomfort during menstruation. Aspirin reduces the body temperature and controls pain because the way it works, it prevents prostaglandin synthesis.